So first, a mild apology. I spent most of yesterday at the father and daughter dance for my daughter's high school, and you know, you wouldn't think it, but there was a lot of screaming and a lot of singing along with the songs on the dance floor for about 5 hours yesterday, and so I'm a little hoarse. I'm going to try to power through it, but it was a lot of fun, and I'm not really sure why I'm sharing that with you all, but I thought maybe everybody needs to have one more tidbit about me and my life. So I'd like each of our panelists to introduce ourselves, but I think the premise of this panel our starting point was, you know, let's get a group of video people in a room full of display people and tell them how much display sucks. And so, and it's funny because, and I don't want to steal the thunder of the panel, but the consensus that we came up with was actually exactly the opposite. So I'm going to let each of our panelists introduce themselves, and then we're going to jump right in. So on my immediate left is David Down from eBureau.
Hi, Dave Dohan from eBureau. eBureau is a offline data provider. We build custom audiences that allow our clients to focus their media buys and be more efficient.
So I'll take the digital or the display sucks role if you want, just to have fun. But my name is Randy Kilgore. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Tremor Video. Tremor Video is the largest online video ad network. We've been around for over 6.5 years now.
So for those of you who don't know, Randy is one of a very small number of people who essentially built what is now known as the display advertising business. So I love the idea of you tearing that down.
My name is Sarah Yost. I'm with Viacom Media Networks. I lead digital sales for all of the music brands, so MTV, VH1, CMT, and Logo.
And I'm Terry Gallo with Media Brands Audience Platform. I head up Marketplace Development, which is really our media strategy and data strategy across our cross-digital channel programmatic buying entity.
Wow.
Wow.
I know, it's a lot. I'm John Nitty. I head up digital media at Zenith Media. No long acronyms or anything like that after it. Sorry.
That's awesome. Thank you.
You guys are just busy doing work. You don't have time for long acronyms. No.
Right.
So let's start with the initial premise of the panel and the idea that, you know, video advertising is cutting away at display budgets. And you know, let's start with Randy. You know, do we agree with that premise?
Well, you know, like anything, right? It's not one single answer, and I don't want to sound like the search for a one-handed economist, but a lot of what we're seeing is TV dollars, right? A lot of TV dollars coming, and so that's TV dollars moving over, and there's code for that, right? Where we need reach, we need awareness, we need efficiency, you know, and then within that, you know, there's definitely more strategic budgets coming from brands that have to make decisions about where that money is going to come from. It feels like a lot of times that's still coming from traditional media, that it's coming from print, that it's coming from other areas. Some display, but you know, people are bifurcating, like the premise of the panel a lot, right? Display is really, you know, more DR, and branding, TV or online digital video is branding.
Anyone else want to add on to that?
Sure, I will. I would say that, you know, for us, coming from a content creator company, that's what Viacom's really known for. Video certainly is, you know, our best performing and, you know, sometimes the most robust part of our marketplace. However, I will say that it does a great job in driving our display marketplace as well. So we see that they really work hand in hand.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the funny thing when Alan asked me this question was video hasn't really been the source, I think, of display budgets going away. I think you can look at things like search and other performance-based media that has drawn from display historically, but I think it's just now maybe going to start. If you think about how advertisers utilize display for audience intelligence, and I'm sure David could speak a bit more from a data perspective, you're now going to be able to do that with online video. And I think once you're able to do that with online video, then it's going to start to pull a little bit away from display. But up until this point in time, I agree with Randy. It's purely been, video is video strategy, and how do you reach those eyeballs as the consumers move across to the different screens.
So I guess my perspective would be, and we've seen this with a number of our clients, that it's not an either-or proposition. So as you get more precise data, the ability to do finer grain targeting within display, it really kind of fleshes out what's the purpose and the overall strategy. Where does each unit fit into the strategy? So we've recently done a campaign with an East Coast online university. And part of the strat, and this is relatively focused, so it's just 4 states. And without proper audience targeting techniques, video was just out of their reach. It was just too inefficient for them. But by actually combining some very rich data, we're able to do a video campaign, and we overlaid that with a displayed campaign, and they work very well together. So the video campaign was all about establishing more of a dialogue, getting that initial kind of engagement, the feeling, so to speak, of the brand. And then the display campaign was more about reinforcing that throughout that user base as they surfed on the web. So to me, I see a bigger trend towards combining those 2 different media types more synergistically instead of an either-or trade-off.
So it sounds like the clear consensus of the panel is that they really aren't eating away at them right now. But I thought I heard a hint from at least 2 of you that you feel like down the road, a year, 2 years, that video is going to start eating into the display budgets? Is anybody ready to say that?
I mean, like I said, I think if people are utilizing display right now to be their audience targeting and to leverage all the data that you know about your existing customer base or your prospect customer base, if you're able to do that with sight, sound, and motion, I think there is an opportunity that that'll pull slightly from display. I don't disagree that using both of them together to have upper funnel metrics of getting people into consideration set with sight, sound, and motion, and then precisely target them with display when you know they're further down the funnel. I don't disagree with that methodology, but I just do think now that you can apply those same data targeting tactics to pure audience buying to video, that you're going to start to see, marketers have choice in how they want to target their existing customer base and their prospect base.
Any prognostications on when that starts to take place?
If I knew that, I'd be very rich. No, I think we're starting, and again, Terry obviously sits in one of the larger ones, but you're starting to see the holding company trading desks have access to video inventory. And that's going to obviously, when you can take the same data sets or the same blue sky segments and project that out across video marketplace as well, that's going to lead to it.
Yeah, but there won't be that kind of scale available, right? I mean, not the kind of scale that you can have with display. So that's why display lends itself to sort of the audience targeting and the DR side of it, right? Because you can't measure it for effective branding. I'll say that, and anybody can come back at that if you want. But you can put 10 display ads on it to be egregious, so 10 display ads on a page, right? And get attribution for those, whether truly or false.
We try to stay away from that, but.
So what?
I said we try to stay away from that.
It's not an ideal, right?
You do, and the quality, advertisers do, but it's a big ecosystem.
I think, if it's to the point of leveraging programmatic channels to acquire video, we are very actively doing that today. I mean, there is no question about it. What we've started to see probably 6 to 8 months ago on the display side with integration of private marketplaces occurring through programmatic channels, we're having that same dialogue with our strategic publishing partners on the video side as well. Now, in some cases, video scarcity within certain publishers, and we're working effectively to help them do more with content distribution and build audiences and circulate video promotions across their network to enhance the amount that we can acquire for our clients. But we are absolutely seeing that, and I agree with John, as more things start to happen with the data sets and X-Lights and others start to be able to apply audience targeting capabilities and things like that beyond contextual to video, we're going to see a lot more momentum, whether it be in direct channels or programmatic channels. Because I would say today, from an agency perspective, probably 70% of the video buys that we place, even outside of programmatic, are tied to the way that they're acquiring audiences in TV and trying to align those metrics. So probably not perfect and far from perfect over the next maybe year or 2 years, but certainly the methodology and the thinking is there.
But you think long term that does not bode as well for, well, I guess maybe I don't want to put words in your mouth. Longer term, that does mean that video is going to be cutting into display.
I think, today video plays a really, really important role in helping us unlock dollars from brand advertisers that may have been less interested in starting their campaigns in display. What we've seen is once we unlock those dollars from those brand marketers, we can easily transition them into display consideration and running display campaigns as well. How it happens 2 or 3 years from now, there probably will be some cut in because the preference is obviously to be within bigger spaces, sight, sound, and motion, do more, connected more to TV. Obviously that's critically important, and I would suggest that, you know, entities and publishers find ways to create and drive video content and assets.
Yeah, and I also think it's going to tie to how you define display in 2 years. Right. I think display needs to evolve. It can't be, you know, just the standard IAB units that we have currently right now. It can't be that the display platform on a mobile device is non-joined. Obviously, there was an announcement, I think, earlier today here by the AdMob folks about being able to access their inventory through the double-click ad exchange. So I think all those things are going to evolve the display marketplace. And so to say if video is going to be what's robbing from that, you know, that pool of dollars, I think that obviously within our space overall, it changes and evolves. So I think display will change and evolve over that period of time as well.
And, go ahead.
All right, so I think a few of you have talked about kind of the display is traditionally direct marketing, video is traditionally branding. We've got a room full of display people here. What's your advice on how those folks can, what can they be thinking about? What can they be doing to attract those branding dollars? And you know, John, you had talked about, well, they need to rethink display. What does that mean?
Well, look, again, if you're a premium publishing site and you're selling content in context, how do you bring that to life in the best way for your users? What do your users go to your content sites for? And then how do you ingrain my marketer's message in a enabling way that's going to have their brand metrics break through, as well as maybe some of the more direct metrics? I think that's what really needs to be sold through. Is everybody says premium, right? And I'm a premium site. Everybody has a different definition of premium. I think that's one of the problems. Everybody has a different premium they want to charge for that experience, and I really think it's trying to harness what they can, you know, why a user goes to your website and what information is served up in a way that keeps them going back, and how my marketer's message can be woven into that, and whether that's in a skyscraper or a box unit or something else that's going to enhance that experience. I think that's what needs to be focused on, because at the end of the day, as long as we're driving brand metrics and as long as we're driving ROI, I mean, my agency's tagline is the ROI agency, then that proves out. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't, you know, matter as long as we can track back to an attribution. And I think that's, you know, what Randy had mentioned earlier, is the whole attribution model and what truly through that customer journey, each of those touch points, you know, make a difference.
We've actually been doing a lot to innovate in the display space. You know, and you know, I'm in a cable company, and we create a lot of original programming. So video is just, you know, what naturally advertisers are attracted to when it comes to our product. But at the same token, we're running a business, and we have been able to keep the display and very robust, partly by innovating in the space. So one of the things that we've been doing is taking a simple practice, you know, like the concept of a roadblock, and creating a point of entry roadblock whereby a giant video experience that, you know, will launch from those display units. And that's something that we've been doing with movie studios, as well as QSRs in various categories. But for us, it's all about the innovation within display.
And I think, you know, interesting, you spent a lot of time on the publishing side, and what always surprised me was the lack of adoption of rich media video and banners. And I think that still has to play out a bit in terms of being able to effectively, from a publishing perspective, find better ways to monetize your display ads, use video, create a package, build opportunities that harmonize in-stream video with rich media video, your mobile video applications and things like that, and kind of pull those pieces together. And I think that then really all boats rise, and display just becomes incrementally more valuable.
Yeah, the rising stars, IAB formats, right, almost all had video, or at least the option of including video in there. And those are great examples, right, of how to incorporate video, make it a branding-worthy vehicle, if that's fair to say. You know, I always gather, because again, I'm pure play video at this point, but in stream, but that's a scale issue, right? So you can charge more for it, but you can only have so many home pages, you can only have so many of those units. But then that video and banner is such an interesting point, right? Because in order to create scale, a lot of video companies create what essentially looks like video, is video, but it's really video and banner. So differentiating between real rich media and faux video, really an important part, just for, or else, you know, maybe that's considered an opening for display to come back after video when we can't really sort of classify our inventory properly.
Right. Well, I think, you know, in that space with the larger ad units, I mean, there's such a great opportunity to take the content that a publisher owns or controls and create distribution for their advertiser, right, within their own network. So I might be buying the VH1 in-stream, I don't know, X show or what have you, and then I can basically take that show and that programming and deploy that across the rest of my network through display, running the content and wrapping the advertiser's ads around that, and that becomes, you know, perhaps a really interesting way to extend a program while at the same time, you know, driving value through your display ads. So.
A lot of times when we are selling a marketing program that has an experience tied to it, one of the great ways to extend that message beyond, you know, within a specific video or within a specific show, like Divas, for example, on VH1, within the Divas experience is to really deploy display units throughout our entire network that contain both content and brand messaging for an advertiser.
Very good. So, you know, Randy, the secret sauce behind the ScanScout technology that you guys bought is essentially the ability to deliver a relevant ad based upon the video that that's wrapped around in a brand safe way. And that's well and good. That's essentially a contextual play, though. And I would love your thoughts on what you know, how does that bode for the audience targeting side of the equation? Because that's a whole different ball of wax when you think of targeting.
Right. So the first thing, this is why my job is hard, if I can complain, is because I have to explain a third way, if you will. It's not really contextual. What we do is, because we do understand what's in the video, which is a unique technology, the ability to scan the video, we are able to provide brand protection. So, you know, we can block any kind of inappropriate ad from appearing, but we don't just use it to classify based on content. Then we use what our third way is to understand the performance of the advertising itself, right? So if somebody completed the full view of the ad, then that's a behavior that then we can use the content of the video, but also data, audience data, semantic data, to be able to build a profile around that user. If somebody stopped the pre-roll from running in order to interact with a unit, you know, an interactive unit that we built for that, then that's a behavior then. And so it's performance of the ad, then you know, we can optimize against the performance of that ad over time. So the point is that there is an awful lot of people looking to do data targeting, and I always, I guess I'd ask the display folks, at what point, you know, does the data become commoditized in of itself, right? Everybody's buying mostly similar data and driving the price up against each other in order to use that to overlay, to add value to the targeting proposition, and it feels like that isn't, you know, we can do that. You know, we can go into the Blue Sky Exchange and we can buy data and use that to help augment a buy or build a profile around that buy. But to me, that's not an end game. That's a commoditization that actually leads down a road that I think Terry and folks will help. There's a segment of inventory that belongs in that sort of bucket of being liquidated by using data, but in, again, a sort of a commoditized way.
So, David, as the resident data guy on the panel, I thought you may have heard things like this in the past. And so, what's the response?
Well, I guess first I'd push back a little bit on the Randy comment about the commoditization of data. I mean, I agree there is certain commodity data out there. Ultimately, it is about trying to get in front of the target market, however you do that, the target audience, right? In video, the stakes are much higher to do that, to consistently hit the target. If you're paying a $10, $15 CPM for video, and only 20% of the videos are actually to the in-target market, you just paid $100 CPM. So as the cost of the inventory goes higher, the value of the data actually is much more important from a targeting perspective. So, and like I said, the stakes are much higher as the cost of the inventory goes up.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that's trying to make video like display, though, right? So if you're trying to drag it back down into that tar pit, then that's fine. But if it's really about, you know, enhancing the brand health metrics that are involved, that are, you know, what underpins branding, right, which ties back to intent or to brand lift or to awareness, then it's different.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, but ultimately you can do all the work you want on engagement and intent. If it's the wrong audience, it's irrelevant, right? The advertiser wants to get in front of their audience. If it's a starting point, if it's a very starting point, you are missing the mark 80% of the time with the target market. Everything else is irrelevant. It's wasted spend.
So it all depends on if you rely on data, it depends on the validity of the data.
Absolutely. It's got to be accurate data to the extent that you can, and it's got to be, you know, to your point, very actionable too. So it's a starting point. It's table stakes, right? If you're not, again, when we hear about brand studies and brand engagement studies, the brands don't want to know how what were my engagement metrics with the 16-year-old boy that's surfing, right? They don't care. Ultimately, it's about within my target market, what are the engagement metrics, right? That's the important part. So again, this is a part of a debate that I think that I don't hear often enough, and I'm trying to push it here. How much of your impressions are really on target? If you're talking about display, where you're paying maybe 80 cents a CPM, some of the programmatic buying, it might not be as relevant. When you're paying $10, $15, $20 CPMs, it's extremely relevant.
So Terry, you were jumping at the bit.
Just two things there. So I would just say that data is a pretty broad term. You know, it's not just about cookie-based data that people perceive to be commoditized, which it's not often. It's contextual data, it's analytics and the ability to apply analytics to the decisioning that you're making, whether it's programmatic or plan buying. You know, so it's pretty broad, and I would just caution that, you know, even getting Nielsen or ComScore ratings against video is very valuable, and that's data as well. And then, you know, the second point I would just say, there is a little comment on the 80 cent CPM from programmatic channels. That unfortunately is not the case. We pay quite a bit for the right audience, for the right advertiser. So I just want to squash that.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I know,
to the extent that,
right.
yeah, I was talking more of the spray and pray approach, right? You can get 80% CPM, so you absolutely can buy it.
You can buy it direct too, but
Yep.
yeah, so.
I agree.
Cool. Just got to protect the channel.
All right, anybody else want to jump into the fray?
Data?
Yeah, I think.
There you go, John.
Yeah, I mean, I think to build on Terry's point, data is very broad. In one hand, it could be first-party data, right, which is invaluable, right? And when I can buy my exact customer base or know what they saw the last time they were at my website or when I reached them online, that's invaluable. This way, I can be more intelligent about how I'm speaking to my customer base or my prospect base. And I think that won't get commoditized. I do agree with Randy that if a large financial services company all target the same blue sky segment, then yeah, then we're only driving up the marketplace. And so I think you need to be smart about how you approach data and when you marry third-party and first-party data, and that's going to be true about both display and the video marketplace. To me, was always interesting, because I look at it from an overall, at the end of the day, regardless what the screen is, the consumer really doesn't give a shit, right? They see a brand, and they want to understand that the brand knows about them or recognizes them, and that's our job, is to make that more seamless across the board. What's interesting about digital, because I came from traditional, I was vendor side at a point, I was client side. You know, if you look at how we target, you talk about wasted audience, look at how we target on a broadcast linear feed and what rules and what data is there and available and what is acceptable, it's vastly different. I do agree that clients and marketers look to digital to be more precise and more surgical in their approach. I just worry that how we look at it, what standard is going to make it a bit more difficult to have dollars be truly fluid. And I think that's what we're going at. For our clients, it's about reaching that consumer, understanding about what they saw before, regardless what screen they choose to port into that content on. And so that's what we're driving in our overall strategies and our buying approach to the marketplace. So I think data is extremely important there, because without that and without the analytics that you talk about, there's no way you're going to have that full intelligence, and you're going to be very siloed in each of your touch points.
Yeah, I like the distinction you made between data and intelligence too. We say the same thing. I mean, data is table stakes. You need to have data, but ultimately it's the intelligence layer on top of it that makes it. That's what makes an audience, frankly, is the intelligence.
I think that's a great point, and for us, we've sort of dipped a toe in data in the past, and we're, sort of full force there right now with the new partnership with Demdex that we're rolling out. But I like the idea of audience as well, and that's, for us, why we'll go down the data road, but we're also charging down the social route. We need to do that. That's sort of where our audience has really looked to us in a new way. We're 60 million fans between Facebook and Twitter for all of our music brands, and figuring out how to target and engage them for our advertisers. I think that's where we're placing a lot more emphasis.
And that's an excellent point. Of you talk about display. You think about Facebook and how much dollars they've sucked out of the marketplace. You know what I'm saying? And that it is a form of display, but you talk about available ad budgets and things like that. So I think that's a viable argument.
Yeah, I agree with that. Although I think that was that 2 panels ago.
Right.
Is that where did we come out with that? Yeah. So. Well, Sarah, can you talk a little bit more about what you guys, we talked on our prep call a little bit more about what Viacom's doing with social and video, and I thought it was pretty interesting, and just I would love to get a couple of examples of the types of stuff that you're doing, because I think the audience would find that interesting as well.
I think it's, when we think about ourselves as content creators, and we are now, I think, fully engaged, probably for the past 2 years, but even more so in the last 18 months, of thinking about social as a programming platform. And I think for us, it drives both our video and our display market. Like I said before, the display unit is often, how someone will know that we have, something going on in the social space. And within social, we're messaging, up to 100 times a day, and we really like to think about them as stories. What kind of programming can you put out in either 140 characters or a Facebook post? But like I said, when it comes to how we use that for advertising, it's still a road that we haven't fully figured out yet. I would point to the VMAs as an excellent example. That was a marriage of display, of video, and a Twitter product with the Twitter tracker that was sponsored by Verizon, where we had, I think, the perfect storm of buzzworthy pop culture content, and a really smart media plan and marketing plan that made that, break all kinds of Twitterverse records with Beyonce and her baby bump. But I say that seriously because it was, a joyous moment. It's nice when something in pop culture is celebratory instead of, knocking someone down. But, for us, I think that's a great example of how they all are working together. So it was, a video-driven show that was driving this really amazing marketing program that married a couple of different platforms across the web as well, ultimately to drive this huge media campaign.
Yeah, very cool stuff. I got in trouble with my daughter because I thought that Beyonce sang Empire State of Mind. And I got a lot of trouble from the 14-year-old set for that. Yeah, I know. That's kind of a faux pas. Yeah. I'm from the hipster music scene, so it's a whole different ball of wax. Is anybody doing a better job of monetizing some of the remnant inventory? I mean, it's been an area that the brands have traditionally been very loath to even dip their toe in. Does anybody have any experience with how that's working? Is anybody doing that well now?
What is remnant?
I was going to ask the same question when you said, what is premium? Because I always thought premium is kind of like Starbucks says it's a tall, but it's the smallest thing on the menu.
I mean, I think, Susan, what you guys have is probably the most challenging way to, find remnant. When Beyonce's baby bump is, when it hits the wire, your inventory goes through the roof, right? But that's not remnant, right? You just described that as a really cool, amazing social event, but you've got a lot of inventory, right? Mm-hmm. That's not remnant to me. And I'm not sure what remnant is in this space right now, because it's still relatively new. Premium publishers don't, they mostly hold on to their own inventory at this point, unless they are in a position where there's demand being driven by a consumer base. It's different than when I think of remnant, I think of, the bottom of the page or late night TV or something like that.
And just from an audience targeting perspective, I mean, I don't even know if the concept remnant exists. It's all about, provided that there's brand safety around the placement, it's above the fold, and you're able to get the message in front of absolutely the right person, why is that remnant?
Well, I think that's the differentiator, is that we're talking about unsold inventory, right? depending upon what filter makes it remnant or not, I think is questionable by publisher. But by applying that audience overlay, it all of a sudden becomes something that is triggered and that is of interest to me because I know it's a qualified audience versus, to your point, if it was just buying 5 impressions on one site because it wasn't intelligent, because I didn't know it was my customer, I wouldn't have not otherwise bought those 5 impressions on that one site. So it's really taking long tail, unsold inventory, and again, I'll use making it more intelligent, and therefore that's what I'm going to buy against it because I know it's the right eyeball at the right time. May not be in the context of what I want it to be, right? And that's where Randy and Sarah and the premium networks come in to provide the context of message for a different part of the funnel. But if it's the right eyeball, that's when we trigger the fire.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if there's unsold inventory, it's often a case of market inefficiencies rather than it is of really what we consider again to be traditional remnant, because the way that, so as a network, we were bought for a long time before we purchased ScanScout and had a better mousetrap, was site list, right? When you're buying site list, right, you're only buying, literally, you're not buying the individual, piece of inventory stream. You're buying based on a composite demographic, and therefore, and then that just created a lot of waste because people, I don't want that site, I don't want this site. When you say, hey, I want this user though, I want this potential consumer, then that definitely helps create a much more efficient market. And then we talked about it a little bit earlier, but the classification of video inventory, like I think that will then that'll recreate a bit of a remnant when people understand that something that's interacted with is a higher order than something that's an impression, really just something that appears, it might even be autoplay, and just not as valuable.
So let me ask that John and Terry. I mean, you're out there talking to everybody on the advertiser side. What are some of the things that advertisers are asking for in terms of metrics for video? And what can the video folks learn from the great knowledge base that we've seen in display?
I mean, for me, I think Randy just started we've been very rigorous about classification. What is long form versus short form? 5 minutes or more. What's truly in stream and not autoplay, and not something that's a player that can be hijacked and placed at the bottom of a fold and count as an impression. Not having a pre-game, preload count towards an in-stream unit. Again, all these classifications and measurements and metrics are things that are inconsistent across the video marketplace, and we're trying to drive more consistency. This way, we know that the advertiser is truly getting what they're paying for, and if I'm going to pay a premium for an opt-in pre-roll for content that people are going to sit down and understand that they're going to be exposed to an ad message and therefore have higher recall because of it, then we can start to get and calculate at those premiums because there's true value there versus what is unfortunately, maybe not Randy's network, but other video ad networks that are sort of the dark underbelly of the marketplace where there are things that are playing in a thumbnail of this size that's supposed to be classified as pre-roll video. And therefore, we have to employ technology overlays to ensure that we're getting what we're telling our clients that we're buying for them. So I think it's more consistency and classification of both content and then also the ad experience. When does it count? I think ScanScout has their methodology, but everybody else has a different methodology of what's a true impact or view and things like that. So again, just greater standardization, to make sure that we can continue this flow of dollars towards video that we've seen over the past couple of years.
And I think, for us, you said it very well. It's about engagement, making sure that the places you're running your clients' ads are truly valuable and valued. Some of the other things, although we, see growth in video across the board, we still have issues with scale at certain points, and I would just say that tends to come up a lot in terms of helping these clients scale their video campaigns, and I think the mechanisms we talked about with display and things like that are perhaps ways to do that as well, and then really that's it. And certain advertisers are looking, as crazy as it may seem to us, looking to align their in-stream desktop and mobile and tablet campaigns and harmonize those, but also align them to what they're doing in TV. So we may suggest that the measurement is not right or wrong or what have you, and very benign, just thinking about very simple demographics for what we can do in digital, but that is a very loud, constant request, can you take for me and mirror what I'm doing in TV and run that across these now high consumer engagement channels online. So
yeah, and that's, I mean, so there's, when you hear we hear metrics, that usually is a, you know, somebody who is newer to the marketplace, right? Because it's impressions or it's clicks or it's not very, not higher order way of looking at the possibility. Where, and we were talking about case studies and things that are of interest, where an actual, one of my favorite examples, an actual advertiser, health and beauty, said, we think time spent is the most important metric that we want to measure because, but our goal is brand lift, right? So we optimized towards brand lift through our, what we call Video Hub. It's the ability to measure brand lift, and it was decreasing, right? They were losing, for this campaign, the audience they reached, they were losing share, or mind share. So we switched it around and optimized it towards actual brand lift, and sure enough, it came right back up. So that's the kind of conversation that I think gets us out of the metrics conversation and actually what makes the campaign work, which is the fun, interesting conversation, right? And I do, Terry, I think, interestingly enough, it could go the other way, right? As we understand more what makes a video campaign work online, we can use that to inform the TV buy, right? And the traditional market.
Absolutely.
Which is,
I mean, as channels merge and we're testing more connected TV experiences and tying those things, I mean, they are connected, right? So how this plays out to be determined, but you're right. I agree with that.
So we get to reconvene for a panel. Is digital video taking TV's, eating TV's lunch? How's that?
There you go. We got a long way to chip at that iceberg.
I wasn't going to put it in my calendar.
It's a pretty big iceberg, though, fortunately.
What's that?
It's a pretty big iceberg, though, fortunately.
Big iceberg.
I know we want to take a couple of questions from the audience. I can tell because Steve's standing back there with the mic.
How about video's migration across platforms? One of the things we've been hearing throughout the day is the ways in which various other platforms are even proving to be even more engaging than the web, as a lot of the creative, various kinds of display creative moves across it. What are the particular opportunities and challenges for video as it's moving across into not only mobile, but also tablet, and then, of course, connected TV?
Yeah, I think, you know, a huge opportunity. I mean, that is part of our team's mission, is to harmonize buying, not just get the lowest CPM, harmonize buying across all these channels. And if you look at video, tremendous opportunity. And I think the thing that's really stimulating that is some, you know, technology advancements, things that Tremor is doing and some of the other DSPs in the video space that are really pulling together the ability to run these campaigns across platform. And we're seeing very, very positive results.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's like exhausting, right? Here we are trying to figure out digital video, and we better figure out connected TV and mobile pretty quickly. And is it 4 screens or is it 3 screens now?
4.
Is it 4, right? So, good. Now I can take that back. We settled something. So, understanding exactly the same thing. Like, how do we, first of all, how do we get it so we can optimize across all of those? Not for clicks or for, you know, metrics, but for brand health metrics. And then how do we understand what experience is better? How do we adopt, you know, how do we recommend for different formats in each one? How do we even begin to explain the different ways to track and report on in each of the different views that you have now as a consumer?
Are the formats going to stay the same as they move across? I mean, when I'm looking at my tablet at night, it's an extremely engaging thing, but I'm watching it in tandem with my TV. I'm not about to start a pre-roll. So, you know, one of the things we heard earlier today is that we really are talking about different use cases, different modes. And I'm curious if video is starting to think about the ways in which it extends itself into different modes of use, and that the formats have to be different. And maybe a pre-roll doesn't work, but it's a different, more elective format.
Well, so I don't know. Everybody's looking at me. So pre-roll is pre-roll works for short form video online, right? Absolutely. You know, but it also works in. I mean, you guys work with long form a lot. It works very well in mid roll and a lot of other different ways. I think the panel. I did catch a little bit of the social panel before, and they recommended video in apps, right? So for Facebook, to understand how to like connect with your Facebook audience. So definitely a lot of different ways to think about it. Pre-roll is the currency of choice for sure.
I really like what Terry said about harmony, and that's one of the things that we strive to achieve. Both MTV and VH1 have launched co-viewing applications for tablets specifically, and I think it's about deploying the message on television and then having an experience on the tablet that corresponds to one another. And like I said earlier, we're really leaning into social. So for us, it's sort of about capturing that conversation and creating an experience around the conversation. In essence, these applications act as social DVRs for what people are talking about during the television show. So mastering that ad format, it's still an open canvas.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that at the end of the day, it's best available screen, right? And there's going to be erratic viewing habits of, I may watch linear feed one night and maybe on my tablet another night. I may be traveling and watching it on my handheld. So that's going to need to sort of change and morph. And I think that you're starting to see full episode players adopt different ad loads within that, and that standardization is still happening as it rolls out. But I do agree with the whole aspect of, even if you have somebody watching a linear feed and they have their iPad or their tablet out, you're not getting full mind share because they are so active on their laptop or on their tablet. So what is that co-viewing engagement that you need to have to even just have the full mind share that you once had when somebody was paying attention to TV? So it is sort of changing how we architect our strategies to capture greater mind share, to have that complement that we know people are engaging with while they're watching a different feed.
We've got one more question over there, Steve.
Yes, Neil Straw from TripAdvisor. When Linda at Gridley spoke earlier, one of the questions she asked the audience was if online metrics were going to move to offline metrics, or if offline metrics were going to have to move to online metrics. And the majority of the crowd felt that it would be that online metrics would not have to move to offline metrics. Is it the opinion of this panel that the GRP is going to become dominant in both online video, banner displays, et cetera, if that's how we're going to really compete with television for the big dollars?
I think it's a combination of the two. I think that you're going to start to see online influence of offline, and the fact that you're going to optimize, right? You're not just going to hit an insertion order and then wait for a post-buy. As things get more dynamic via technology feeds, you're going to be able to optimize your buys across screens. So I think there's going to be digital influence onto the offline buys. I do think to get marketers comfortable, right? If they know X number of GRPs moves X boxes off shelf in a given week, there's going to need to be that IGRP calculation in order to get the dollars to continue to shift. Now, whether that ultimately means that we purely buy online video on a GRP basis, I mean, I don't know, but there's definitely there's a need to get marketers comfortable that have 25 years of historical econometric modeling that says I run X amount of GRPs, I get X amount of test drives, I get X amount of units sold, whatever the service may be, that to continue that flow, I think you're going to need to adapt that. But I do think it's sort of an influence in both directions.
I agree. I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. But the money from a display, video, online perspective that we need to grab, that iceberg, is television, and being able to kind of synthesize how they work together is probably a good step towards capturing some of those dollars, I think, absolutely.
I think the most exciting thing that's going to happen, I agree, first of all, it's both. And we're integrating Nielsen, GRPs, the online, so we'll be able to report on that. And CPG cares more about that than anybody else, right? Probably financial services doesn't at all, right? We have to think about things in terms of verticals. But the most exciting thing I think is going to happen is if anybody's following the Making Measurement Make Sense initiative, the 4A's, the ANA, and the IAB have all gotten behind the idea of creating a cross-platform metric, right? So you can, I guess that's equivalent, there will be a GRP, right? That'll turn into a GRP. And for the display folks, I mean, if you're not paying attention, it's going to wipe out half your inventory probably, right? Because the first rule of being able to qualify for being included in the rating point will be that you'll have to be viewable, meaning above the fold, for more than 5 seconds, or give or take. I mean, the rules are still being ironed out. But so if that matters to anybody, you could be nervous about it. But I think it's healthy, too, getting back to the point whether the initial conversation of the panel, are we going to take money from display? Actually, if you essentially become much clearer to a consumer marketer that your inventory is above the fold and being seen and counts towards the GRP, you have an opportunity to take dollars back. It's pretty exciting.
Absolutely, and you raise the value. I mean, something to be said a little bit for scarcity too, right?
All right, so we've got to wrap this up, but I got one more question for all the panelists. With this premise, video is going to eat display's lunch in 3 years. Scale of 1 to 10. 1 being absolutely not, 10 being, as they say in the Sunday morning chat shows, metaphysical certainty. Where do you stand?
I say 3.
Wait, 1 was absolutely not?
1 is no, 10 is absolutely.
It's not. And Facebook doesn't count because Facebook already did that?
Did you go to law school?
It wouldn't have me. I'll go absolutely not.
So 1.
Right? 1.
1? No,
Well, that's
never?
what he said, yeah. I'm more like 5.
Yeah, I'm a 5.
I'm going 6. I actually think that once we harmonize the video across these different channels, that search has an even more interesting place in that experience, and that's a little scary.
Okay, the right answer is neither. I think both display and video are going to be just merged 3 to 5 years from now to the point where we can't fully recognize each under current definitions. But I would like to thank our panel for playing. I'd like to thank the audience, and I'd like to thank Steve and the Media Post folks.
Thank you.